Chapter 71 Leaving the Village. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Over the next couple of weeks, Uchiha Gen dedicated his time to mastering spiritual transformation techniques, honing his physical abilities, delving into nature transformations and illusions, practicing snake ninjutsu, and developing 2 new ninjutsu he had in mind. His schedule was packed. Yuzuki Shien dropped by again, and Gen Uchiha made time to discuss techniques and offer some guidance. Shien couldn't come every day. As a genin, she had to accompany her team leader on missions to earn a living. Few Konoha ninjas had the free time Gen Uchiha enjoyed. Even with his responsibilities assisting Orochimaru's experiments, Gen still had half a day to himself. A few days later, Gen Uchiha, relaxing in his living room after lunch, watched the snowflakes fall and felt a sudden inspiration. He got up, left the house, and headed to the 3rd floor of the police headquarters, knocking on the captain's office door. "Come in," a calm, serious voice responded. Uchiha Gen opened the door and bowed slightly. "Lord Fugaku." "Ah, General, come, have a seat. What brings you here?" Uchiha Fugaku, wearing a green jounin vest, tried to force a smile. "Thank you. But I won't sit, so as not to interrupt your work. I'll just say what I need to. It's nothing major. It's just that Orochimaru-sensei has some personal business out of the village that he needs me to take care of, so I'm here to request a leave of absence. I hope you'll approve it." Typically, the deputy captain would request leave from the squad leader, but Gen Uchiha's situation was unique. He was essentially in name only, and also Orochimaru's disciple. Asking Fugaku was a formality, a gesture of respect. Even though Orochimaru hadn't been chosen as Hokage, he was still a force Fugaku couldn't ignore. Even without the Hokage backing, Orochimaru's sheer power was enough to command Fugaku's respect. "I see. No need to formally request leave. You'll just lose pay otherwise." Seeing Gen Uchiha's usual respect, Fugaku felt satisfied and decided to be accommodating. "Thank you, Fugaku-sama." Uchiha Gen bowed slightly again. This trip had essentially become a paid vacation, thanks to the boss's approval. Normally, he could only collect his salary as the police force's vice captain in Konoha. To avoid any whisperings, he couldn't go too far. "Alright, get going then." "Yes." Leaving the police headquarters, Uchiha Gen headed to the hidden research facility deep in the forest and found Orochimaru conducting experiments. After helping out for a while, Uchiha Gen finally spoke. "Orochimaru-sensei, I need to leave the village." "Leave the village? Robin Hood stuff?" "Exactly. Go ahead then. Need any help? Maybe some info?" "No need. If you can't handle something this simple, it would be a disgrace to Orochimaru-sensei, wouldn't it?" "Heh, right." Orochimaru understood the need for plausible cover, so there was no need to spell it out. After finishing up, Uchiha Gen didn't just leave. He spent the afternoon assisting Orochimaru with his experiments. He got home in the evening, ate dinner, prepared for his trip, refined his chakra for a while, and went to bed on time. The next morning, Gen Uchiha didn't make breakfast. He went to Ichiraku Ramen and had a special pork ramen before heading back to Konoha. The snowfall had been heavy overnight. A layer of snow had accumulated on the ground, covering Konoha in white. There were few pedestrians on the streets, and the air was crisp and refreshing. Uchiha Gen wore thermals, a black jacket, thermal pants under black trousers, and a black cloak with silver patterns. His handsome face completed the stylish look. Reaching the Konoha gates, 2 chunin in green vests stopped him. Uchiha Gen followed protocol and wrote down his departure record. The gate guards weren't Kamizuki Izumo and Higane Kotetsu today, but 2 unfamiliar chunin. Seeing the reason Uchiha Gen had written for leaving the village, one of the chunin started to object. But the more mature-looking of the 2 stopped him, and then spoke cautiously. "Excuse me, who are you?" "Konoha Jonin Uchiha Gen, a disciple of Orochimaru-sama," Uchiha Gen said expressionlessly. "Yikes, this guy is too hot to handle. Please, go ahead." Uchiha Gen nodded slightly, and after passing through the gate, he transformed into a black blur and sped into the snowy landscape. "Why did you stop me?" Leaving the village for Orochimaru-sama's personal business violates the regulations for leaving the village. The younger Chunin said angrily. You're still too green. Orochimaru-sama lost his chance at being Hokage. He's likely bitter and touchy. If we stop his apprentice from leaving, we might become his punching bag. And this guy is a jounin from the Uchiha clan. He's a jounin at such a young age. He's obviously a genius and has a bright future. We can't afford to offend both of them. We're just ordinary Chunin with families to support. The younger Chunin looked troubled. But the rules. You really need to wise up. Rules? Who's that for, anyway? The rules are for us, not for the higher-ups, the powerful, or the connected. The older Chunin rolled his eyes, like someone who'd seen it all. No, I mean, if something happens to him out there, what if we get dragged into it? Oh, I get it now. That's simple. We just reported, acting helpless and pitiful. So, the record of leaving the village was reported up the chain, eventually landing on the desk of 4th Hokage, Namikaze Minato. Namikaze Minato's eyes lingered on Uchiha Gen's departure record for a moment, then he stamped it with understood and placed it on the process documents pile. Gen Uchiha's reason for leaving the village didn't comply with regulations. Furthermore, ninjas from the police force weren't supposed to leave the village unless necessary. But Minato Namikaze didn't want to pursue the issue, and it would have been difficult to do so anyway. He had too much on his plate in his early days as Hokage. Picking a fight with Orochimaru over something like this could easily lead to internal strife, which would be detrimental to his position and to smoothing over the village's complex relationships. If he actually did pursue it, the 3rd Hokage and the administrative department's 2 assistants would probably accuse him of making a mountain out of a molehill. Plus, he had to consider Orochimaru's seniority, his connection to his teacher, Uchiha Gen's status as an acquaintance, Uchiha Fugaku's support, and Uchiha Shirsue's discipleship. Being truly impartial was easier said than done. People aren't isolated, we are all connected. Politics always involves compromises after weighing the pros and cons. If Minato Namikaze was truly impartial and inflexible, he wouldn't have become Hokage. That's precisely why those who are impartial and selfless deserve admiration. Uchiha Gen had expected Namikaze Minato not to care, so he hadn't bothered to come up with a plausible reason. No need to waste his brainpower. Class is always present, even when he travels through time and becomes an ordinary civilian. Gen Uchiha doesn't deny it. Chapter 72 Nirvana Blood Naraku. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shirai Castle is one of the most well-known and biggest cities in the Land of Fire's southern region, located where 3 rivers meet on the plains. It's the Land of Fire's southern hub for logistics and trade. Hundreds of thousands of people live there, and the city is always buzzing with activity. Even in winter, things don't slow down much. The Land of Fire has 4 seasons, but the rivers that serve as key transportation routes never freeze. Gen Uchiha, ditching his Konoha headband, strolled through the city like any tourist, but he was really scoping things out and picking his targets. In today's ninja world, no one gets rich by being a good person, and a good person couldn't become rich in the first place. After asking around for a couple of days, Gen Uchiha felt a little lost. There were just too many potential targets. It seemed like anyone could be one. That evening, Gen Uchiha ate dinner at a restaurant and planned to walk around a bit. He'd then head back to his hotel and pick his lucky winner by drawing lots. Seemed like the fairest way to do it. Wandering aimlessly for a while, Gen Uchiha noticed 3 shady-looking guys up ahead, thieves. Gen Uchiha kept an eye on them as he browsed the shops. The 3 men eventually stopped at a popular street barbecue stand. They ordered some cheap grilled veggies and drinks and grabbed a table. After a bit, they started chatting with the people at the next table. A dad and his 2 kids, a boy who looked about 7 or 8 got up and headed to the public restroom. One of the 3 men followed him a few minutes later, smiling. The man came back, but the boy didn't return. Then all 5 of them headed toward the restroom. Something felt off to Gen Uchiha, so he got up and followed. He saw the 3 men walking down the alley, each carrying a kid, a boy and a girl, acting like they were just chatting. Uchiha Gen blocked their path, mirroring their movements wherever they went. You blind or something? The tallest man snapped, clearly annoyed. Put the kids down, Uchiha Gen said calmly. The tall man looked panicked, raising his voice. What are you talking about? These are our kids. Get out of the way. We're going home to get some rest. Yeah, move it. Beat it. The other two chimed in, backing him up. The commotion drew the attention of some passers-by, who stopped to watch. The restroom was maybe 100 yards from the barbecue stand, at the intersection of two alleys. There were streetlights, but some were broken. Stop pretending. Those are my colleague's kids. I just had a drink with him. Why are my colleague's kids passed out on your backs? Hearing Uchiha Gen's confident tone, the onlookers started to look suspicious and edged closer to surround the three men. Viper gang business. You don't want any trouble, so get lost. The tall man pulled out a wicked-looking snake-shaped dagger from his waist. His friendly face twisted into a snarl. The other two men followed suit, brandishing their own daggers. The crowd hesitated, fear creeping into their eyes. The Viper gang was one of Shirai City's biggest gangs, with thousands of members. Not only did they have rogue ninjas on their payroll, but it was rumored that a certain noble in Shirai City was backing them. Ordinary folks couldn't afford to mess with them. Seeing the crowd backing down, the tall man grinned. Get out of here, or else. Before he could finish, Gen Uchiha was on him, channeling wind-style chakra into his fingertips and slashing from left to right. The men's throats opened as easily as paper. As blood sprayed, Uchiha Gen was already behind them, grabbing the two kids by the scruffs of their necks and lifting them up. The three gangsters dropped their daggers, clutching at their throats, but the blood wouldn't stop. They collapsed, their blood staining the ground crimson. He killed someone. Run. We'll get in trouble. Let's go, let's go. The bystanders scattered. Kid, you need to get out of here, leave Shirai City right now. The Viper gang doesn't mess around, a middle-aged man shouted as he ran into the alley, then turned and ran. Uchiha Gen smiled, switching from carrying the kids to cradling them in his arms. He went to the restroom, searched around, but found nothing. Then, he headed to the dirty, dark alley behind the restroom and found the man lying on the ground. He checked him over and realized he hadn't been stabbed. He was just passed out from some kind of drug, just like the kids. Uchiha Gen quickly carried the two kids to another alley, went back for the man, shook off the effects of the drug, and left before any of them woke up. He wasn't worried about them seeing his face. Gen Uchiha had used the transformation technique to change his appearance as soon as he entered the city. With Gen Uchiha's mastery and sheer volume of chakra, maintaining the transformation technique was no problem. It's nice to be thanked, but it's not necessary. He had more important things to do. Human traffickers were the lowest of the low. In his past life, as a regular guy, he couldn't do anything. He could only share those missing person posters. Now he had the power, and if he ran into them, he'd deal with them. Plus, the Viper gang was loaded. He wouldn't need to draw lots to choose his lucky winner. Gen Uchiha didn't go back to the hotel. He headed to the Viper gang headquarters, hiding near a manor in the southern part of the city, waiting for his chance. At 2:30 a.m., when most people are dead asleep, Gen Uchiha used his stealth techniques and slipped into the manor. Illusion, Nirvana blood Naraku. Uchiha Gen stood on the roof of the manor, a bright crescent moon behind him, tiny snowflakes swirling around him. He weaved hand signs, pouring out chakra without hesitation. Clear patterns of delicate, bewitching blood-red feathers rained down, blanketing the entire manor. As dense as snow, but unlike snow, they seemed to exist and not exist, illusions and not illusions. Tiled roofs couldn't stop them. Inside and out, there was nowhere to hide. The moment they saw the blood-red feathers, the thugs and the ninjas froze, paralyzed by their worst fears. Horrified screams echoed through the manor. The combined screams of hundreds of people were deafening. The racket woke up the neighbors, who complained about the Viper gang's late-night antics. They didn't want to, dare to, get up and investigate. They just rolled over, covered their ears, and went back to sleep. The Viper gang had properties all over the city, so not all their members were at the headquarters. The Nirvana blood Naraku technique, an A-rank illusion created by Uchiha Gen, was a blend of the Nirvana temple technique and the Naraku vision technique. turning collective slumber into collective terror. Hearing the screams of fear, Uchiha raised his hands and closed his eyes, enjoying the chaos. Then, he moved, harvesting souls and lifespans. Starting with the core of the Viper Gang, he worked his way through, taking every member, male or female, young or old. The transparent souls and white light merged into Uchiha Gen, like rivers flowing into the sea. 2 minutes later, all the members of the Viper Gang, save the kidnapped, lay on the ground without a sound, untouched on the surface. Uchiha Gen lifted the illusion and headed to the Viper Gang's secret prison. He used the Nirvana temple technique to lull everyone into a deep sleep, erasing their previous terror. He then summoned Wu Sheng, who was practically suffocating in the snake's belly, and entered the prison. A cold light ripped through the prison doors and cells. By the time they woke up tomorrow, the prisoners would be free. After that, Uchiha Gen went to the warehouse where the Viper Gang kept their money. It was just a steel door, no sealing techniques. The barrier techniques protecting the door were nothing to Uchiha General. He sliced it open with the Wind Flame sword. There were a dozen black boxes in the warehouse, and Uchiha Gen created a clone to open them one by one. Even though nothing went wrong, Uchiha didn't think he was being too careful. There's no harm in being cautious. Many powerful people fall victim to the smallest details. The boxes contained a massive amount of cash, gold, silver, pearls, and jewelry. A quick glance showed it was easily over 90 million taels, maybe more. Uchiha Gen left a suitcase of money behind and couldn't count the rest. He closed the suitcase with his clone, bit his lip, and used his summoning technique to call forth giant pythons of different colors. Swallow these, and take them to my teacher Orochimaru as fast as you can, before your stomach acids dissolve them. The pythons nodded, then turned into puffs of white smoke and vanished. There were probably private vaults scattered throughout the manor, but Uchiha was too lazy to search them. This was enough. If he needed more money, he'd just find some more easy marks. He didn't play by the rules of this world's ninjas. He had no qualms about ripping off gangsters, shady businessmen, or decadent nobles. Still, the money felt good. He'd earned this money through hard work, so it wasn't free. With the job done, Uchiha wasn't in a rush to leave. He slipped back to his hotel room and rested. Thanks, Nana, for the tip, even though she didn't say anything out loud. Chapter 73 Plan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next morning at 10, Uchiha stretched, stood up, and got ready for the day. Bang, he ran through a transformation jutsu, white smoke puffing out as he completed the hand signs, then headed to the hotel restaurant. When traveling, Uchiha didn't skimp. He'd chosen one of Shirai City's most famous and luxurious hotels. The guests were mostly wealthy business folks, nobles, officials, and a sprinkling of samurai with deep pockets. After piling his plate high with a lavish breakfast, Uchiha found an empty seat and settled in, casually eavesdropping on the other diners. Did you hear? Hear what? My servant just told me the Viper Gang headquarters got completely wiped out overnight. Whoa, how's that even possible? The Viper Gang was one of Beijing City's biggest gangs. They had serious backing in high places. So, offend the wrong people, you get destroyed. The freakiest thing is, the hundreds who died didn't have a single wound on them, but they looked scared to death. I haven't seen it myself, but just hearing about it gives me the creeps. Seriously? You're not pulling my leg? No wounds, just died of fear. What do I gain from lying to you? My servant overheard it outside. That's what everyone's saying. The Viper Gang members who showed up this morning were practically catatonic when they saw the headquarters. Plus, the neighbors around the Viper Gang heard everyone screaming bloody murder last night. Like they'd seen something truly terrifying. Who did this? Shoo. I'm betting it wasn't human. If it wasn't human, what was it? Ghosts or demons, maybe. Isn't that a bit much? Not at all. You know how powerful ninjas are, right? Sure. Think a ninja could do this? But without waiting for an answer, the first guy kept going. A ninja could definitely wipe out the Viper Gang, but could they make everyone die of fear without leaving a trace of a fight? Good point, makes sense. Exactly. Maybe it was a ghost or demon. I'm out of here after breakfast. What about you? Let's go together. They stopped talking and focused on eating. News of the Viper Gang's demise spread like wildfire through Shirai City. Most people who weren't involved were celebrating. Most were glad the city's most notorious gang was gone. Without them around, things should be safer. Other gangs and their backers were licking their chops, ready to carve up the Viper Gang's territory and interests. With the elite members at headquarters wiped out, the smaller groups guarding their operations wouldn't stand a chance against the hungry wolves. Most people figured it was ghosts or demons, but some thought it was divine punishment. The victims who were kidnapped and abused were able to escape, after all. If it were demons, wouldn't they have just eaten them? People could only speculate, but the Fire Nation City Lord's mansion quickly decided it was man-made. They found human tracks in the Viper Gang's treasury and prison. But even with the City Lord's mansion's resources, they couldn't get any further clues. Who would have thought 3 punks were responsible for the Viper Gang's downfall? Without any other leads, the City Lord's mansion sent a request to Konoha to send someone to investigate. The sudden and mysterious deaths of hundreds made some shady figures very nervous. When Konoha got the request, Namikaze Minato took it seriously and sent a ninja team right away. This was a well-rounded team with ninjas from the Hinata, Nara, Yamanaka, Aburame, and Inazuka clans. The 5 ninjas searched the Viper Gang's manor from top to bottom, thoroughly examining the bodies, but didn't find much. The only clue was the blood-red feathers floating around in the corpse's final memories. It was similar to Konoha's Nirvana temple technique, but not quite the same. There were so many secret techniques in the ninja world, it was hard to be certain. Gen Uchiha figured Konoha would eventually get involved, and that they'd send a ninja good at investigation and tracking, so he'd been careful to mask his appearance, scent, and anything else that might give him away, making sure he couldn't be traced. Of course, that was later. By the time the Konoha ninjas arrived in Shirai Castle, Uchiha Gen was long gone. This was a rare trip. Gen Uchiha didn't want to go home early. He planned to collect some more souls and lifespan. Lifespan wasn't a big deal, not much difference between ordinary people and ninjas. But souls were another story. Thanks to chakra, ninjas' souls were much stronger than ordinary folks. The longer they were exposed to chakra, the bigger the difference became. There was already a difference in quality, but the chakra attached to the ninja's soul made it even more significant. This soul chakra was slightly different from the chakra in the body, maybe from the subtle influence between the soul and chakra. This soul chakra was a great tonic for the soul. It couldn't directly improve the soul's quality, but it could indirectly and subtly boost it. So Uchiha Gen decided to hunt ninjas, specifically rogue ninjas, to avoid causing too much trouble. Regular people's souls were still good, but after the Viper Gang incident, Gen Uchiha didn't want to target them so soon. It was too risky. If he did too much, he'd eventually slip up, no matter how careful he was. Better to quietly collect regular souls on the side. He could use spiritual transformation techniques to possess ninjas, steal their bodies, spread things out, and quietly build his power. Regular people could possess others and steal their bodies, but their bodies weren't as strong, and they lacked the illusion skills to inspire fear. Overall, they weren't very efficient. Obviously, ninja deaths would increase every year, but that wasn't a problem. In the chaotic ninja world, plenty of people died in battle every day. Death wasn't unusual. Fighting and accidents were the norm. The chaotic and dark world had no shortage of human traffickers, gangsters, villains, robbers, murderers, perverts, etc. Uchiha Gen couldn't purify them all himself, even with the soul fruit splitting ability. If the root of chaos and darkness wasn't eliminated, the leaks would keep growing. Uchiha Gen's purification method was much harsher than Namo Gatling Bodhisattva's physical purification. He eliminated them at the root. Where did most of the rogue ninjas hang out? The Black Market. Chapter 74, Killing Thousands of People. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Black Market, a hidden offshoot of the ninja world's gold exchange, is a shadowy hub for illicit activities, accepting assassination contracts, trading ninjutsu scrolls, dealing in intelligence, fencing illegal materials, and trafficking in people. This money exchange operates like an intermediary, theoretically open for anyone to post or accept assignments, but realistically, The contracts are primarily assassinations of ninjas or high-profile targets, making them too expensive for ordinary citizens, so, while technically anyone could post a job, only those in the know could realistically take them on. Finding a way in was the real challenge. The reason this unruly underground stayed in line was the power and complexity of the forces backing the gold exchange. The 5 great nations and their ninja villages all had connections, tacitly acknowledging its existence. Finding the black market would be nearly impossible for the average person, but for Uchiha Gen, a master of illusions, inquiring about its location was child's play. Baishir town, north of Beijing city, wasn't large, but it frequently hosted samurai, rogue ninja, and deserters. That night at midnight, a nondescript tavern called Scarlet Dream opened its doors as scheduled in a secluded part of town. Uchiha Gen's shadow clone, cloaked in black, entered the tavern. After a small payment, he was directed through a secret passage. This tavern was just one entry point to the black market. Hidden passages snaked into the town from all directions. After walking through the passage for about 5 minutes, he emerged into a clearing, the deep forest suddenly illuminated by colorful lights. He stepped forward, finding himself on a street. Buildings lined both sides, mostly wooden structures. Unlike above-ground shops with their signs, these establishments simply had their business painted on the door. Uchiha Gen strolled around, acting clueless and naive. He flashed some cash, quickly drawing attention, but not everyone was fooled. The pig in a poke routine was nothing new here. Those who took the bait were either blinded by greed or confident in their own abilities. After half an hour, feeling he'd attracted the right crowd, Gen Uchiha left the black market through another secret passage. By the time they were out of town and in the woods, some of the more impatient individuals couldn't contain themselves. They attacked without warning. The ambush party consisted of ninjas and samurai. The ninjas launched a barrage of shurikens from the trees. Simultaneously, samurai wielding katanas crackling with blue chakra leaped from the woods, charging forward. Surrounded on all sides, Uchiha Gen was about to be overwhelmed, regardless of whether he was truly a lamb or a wolf in sheep's clothing. Earth style, earth wall. Uchiha Gen dropped the cash and slammed his hands onto the ground, completing the hand seals. 4 walls shot up from the earth. The front and back walls were thick, the side walls thinner, but enough to deflect the shurikens. Seeing the simultaneous rise of the earth walls, the attackers realized their prey was tougher than they'd thought, but they pressed on. 2 samurai surged forward, chakra coursing through their bodies. Blue energy crackled from their katana blades, slashing horizontally. The sword light flashed, and with a muffled thud, the thick earth wall split. They looked through, instinctively focusing on their target. A pair of scarlet Sharingan eyes with the Magatama pattern met their gaze. These weren't just any eyes, the famous Uchiha Sharingan. A silent curse passed their lips, as they tried to avert their gaze. Too late. The illusion took hold, and the samurai crumpled to the ground. At the same time, the 4 ninjas who had been waiting in the woods charged forward, weapons drawn. Nimble and quick, they vaulted over the earth walls, intent on taking down Uchiha Gen. It wasn't that the ninjas didn't know ninjutsu, but they were afraid to use it, worried about damaging their potential reward. Why risk wasting all that money? Gen Uchiha looked up, a smile playing on his lips. His 2 Magatama Sharingan eyes slowly rotated, his body twisting 360 degrees, unleashing another illusion. Genjutsu wasn't limited to single targets, it could affect groups. From the moment the genjutsu was activated until it ended, anyone who met Uchiha Gen's Sharingan was vulnerable. Using his eyes as the medium, the 4 ninjas' senses were twisted. Blind to Gen Uchiha, they plunged their weapons into each other's bodies. The strikes weren't fatal, but they were crippling. Screams pierced the night, waking the forest. Uchiha ninjas are so underhanded. One of the rogues collapsed, coughing blood, his face contorted with rage. This didn't match their image of the Uchiha. To think the clan would come to the black market and feign weakness. Your Uchiha clan is the most powerful family in the ninja world. You're not exactly hurting for cash, are you? Ninja is synonymous with underhandedness. And my people are simple and straightforward, Gen Uchiha said calmly. On the other side, the ninjas and samurai who hadn't attacked heard the screams and knew that Gen Uchiha was no pushover. He really was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Most weren't willing to risk it and were already thinking about retreat. Just as they were about to leave, Uchiha Shien, hidden in the shadows, made his move. Illusion technique, Nirvana blood Naraku. Hey, what are those red feathers falling from the sky? A samurai noticed bloody feathers fluttering down and reached out to catch one. Before his fingers made contact, the illusion consumed him. The most terrifying scene from his subconscious played out before his eyes, his expression twisting into a mask of fear. Aya, the piercing screams echoed, waking every animal in the surrounding woods. Geez, yelling in the dead of winter, humans are so incompetent. In the woods, an ape-like psychic beast with nascent intelligence stirred in its nest, grumbling angrily, but the ape was still new to being a psychic beast and not very strong, so it didn't dare confront the screaming humans. It simply rolled over, covered its ears, and forced itself back to sleep. All the ninjas and samurai had fallen under the illusion. Some reacted quickly, dispelling it as fast as they could, but as soon as they broke free, a silver-white long sword shot from the shadows. The blade stretched out rapidly, the sword light arcing across their location. Puff, puff, puff. The ninjas and samurai who had released the illusion found their legs severed at the knees, and high-pitched screams erupted again. They writhed on the ground in agony, crimson blood staining the snow and melting it away. Gen Uchiha, shrouded in his black cloak, emerged from the darkness, seizing the opportunity to harvest souls and lifespans. Once finished, Uchiha Shien instructed Zhu Rong to dispose of the bodies and cover their tracks. There were too many Viper Gang corpses to risk burning them near the prison, so this wilderness location was perfect. Uchiha Gen went to his shadow clone to collect his payment, and then he meticulously destroyed the bodies and traces. After finishing up, Gen Uchiha returned to his room in the White Rock Town Hotel to rest. For some time after, Gen Uchiha roamed the major black markets in the Land of Fire, using the same old tricks. After all, there were always ninjas who couldn't contain their greed and confidence. A month later, the name Fishing Night Demon started circulating in the underground circles of rogue ninjas, deserters, samurai, and gangs throughout the Land of Fire. Black cloaks became trendy in the black market. 9 out of 10 people wore them, afraid to provoke each other for fear of encountering the Fishing Night Demon. Security improved greatly around the black market. After all, no less than 200 rogue ninja, deserters, and samurai warriors had died at the hands of the Fishing Night Demon, including several jonin and famous samurai. This situation remained until the Fishing Night Demon disappeared 6 months later. A month later, Orochimaru sent a message via Psychic Beast that the research equipment was ready and asked him to return to collect it as soon as possible. Uchiha Gen then set off for Konoha, but he didn't rush, needing time to control the bloodlust radiating from his body. On this trip outside the village, more than 900 people had died at the hands of Gen Uchiha. Including the ninjas he killed during the Ninja World War, he had definitely exceeded 1,000, though his killing intent wasn't quite on the level of Orochimaru in the original story, which caused Sasuke and Sakura to freeze in fear. It could still affect ninjas. It's harder for psychologically fragile ninjas to show their strength. Piratas, confirmed. The book will be on sale this Friday. I hope everyone will support it. The exciting stuff is yet to come. Chapter 75, Studying the Tacit Understanding Between Geniuses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the backwoods of Konoha, Uchiha Gen followed a familiar secret passage into the research base, hidden deep within the lush forest. At the passage's end, Orochimaru stood patiently. Dressed in black tights, a green jonin vest, and with his black hair loosely draped, he presented an elegant figure despite his pale complexion, golden eyes, and blue Magatama earrings. He exuded a dark and cold aura. Gen himself wore a black casual suit, a black cape with silver and white patterns, and his slightly messy black hair framed a handsome face with a healthy complexion. The Kusanagi sword hung at his waist, completing his heroic look. Orochimaru-sensei, Gen greeted with a faint smile and a slight bow. Ho! Seems like you've been busy during your trip. Orochimaru turned and headed towards the base's lounge. Gen, surprised, followed him, asking, I thought I was being careful. How could you tell? I'm sensitive to the scent of blood. Your control still needs work. I'll show you how to mask it better later. I'd appreciate that. They entered the bright, spacious lounge, filled with a fresh, elegant aroma. A pot of freshly brewed tea awaited them on the table. Orochimaru knelt neatly on a cushion behind the desk, while Gen casually sat across from him. After taking a sip of tea, Gen inquired, "How much cash do we have left after buying the research equipment?" "Excluding the gold, silver, jewelry, and gems, about 80 million tael. Let's split it evenly then." "Perfect timing. I'm a little short on funds lately," Orochimaru said plainly. "Oh. What's up?" "Danzo's been forced into retirement, and the higher-ups are taking apart Root. While Danzo still secretly controls Root and its finances, losing Konoha's official funding has been tough. It's even hurting my research. TSK. The fourth Hokage's really cleaning house," Gen remarked. "Minato didn't order it directly, but my teacher did. But ultimately, it's Minato's doing. Danzo must be fuming." "You're bold, using his first name," Orochimaru said with a sly smile. "Pot calling the kettle black." "I'm a rising star, not just some nobody," Gen said calmly, raising an eyebrow. "Ho. Of course Danzo's unhappy. He wants me to speed up the wood release experiments. If they succeed." Orochimaru trailed off, giving Gen a meaningful look. If the experiment succeeds, are you ready to strong-arm your way to the top, star? Too bad the successful experiment didn't yield a true wood release. If Yamato's wood release even had the power he displayed when controlled by White Zetsu during the Fourth War, Danzo would have seized power in a heartbeat. Still, Orochimaru's heading in the right direction. Deeper exploration might just unlock the power of Hashirama Senju's wood release. "Orochimaru-sensei, sounds like you're still eyeing the Hokage seat." "Sure, it's a dream I once had. Of course I still think about it. Wouldn't you?" "Ho. I just don't want my research to suffer. If the Hokage was one of us, not only would it not suffer, it'd be a huge boost. Come on, if the wood release experiment actually works, you gonna let Danzo control the test subject?" "Of course not. Quit acting like you're not interested. Believe what you want." Orochimaru said, annoyed. Yeah, right. You expect me to believe Orochimaru could turn down the Hokage title if it was handed to him on a silver platter, star, but as his teacher, Gen had to show some respect. He changed the subject. "Orochimaru-sensei, how's your reanimation jutsu coming along? And you?" "I'm getting there. I should have it down by the end of next year, tops." Gen didn't want to reveal too much about his progress with the reanimation jutsu. Some things were best kept secret. He suspected Orochimaru had secrets of his own, too. It wasn't about trust, but about maintaining a ninja's sense of privacy. "When you succeed, you're letting me study your soul and body." Orochimaru's eyes gleamed. "No way. My soul and body are off limits. I'm not letting you dissect them," Gen said firmly, his face serious. "If you need any help, let me know. Stop obsessing over my soul and body. There are plenty of other things to study." TSK. Orochimaru seemed disappointed, but didn't press the issue. Then, his expression shifted, and he became animated. "I haven't mastered the reanimation jutsu, maybe I lack the talent, but it inspired an idea about immortality. This is even more promising than my previous leads. I did some digging and discovered the second Hokage had similar ideas. That Tobirama Senju was a genius." "Oh." Gen eagerly played along, showing great interest. "The second Hokage and I both considered transferring one person's soul into another's body, extending lifespan and maybe even achieving immortality. The difference is, the second Hokage actually tried it, while I haven't started yet." Gen feigned surprise. "What a brilliant idea. What came of it?" "He failed, but not completely. He created a semi-finished product. I bet he developed it for the first Hokage. Hashirama died shortly after his battle with the Uchiha ancestor. Clearly, he was either badly injured or weakened. To keep Konoha stable, the second Hokage had to find a way. Too bad he died before finishing it. Given enough time, he might have cracked it. The second Hokage invented tons of ninjutsu and forbidden techniques, along with some semi-finished ones. He must have done a lot of human experimentation. Experimenting on people has been a hidden tradition in Konoha since its inception, so it's no big deal. Of course, there's a world of difference between experimenting on villagers and ninjas. He remembered Tobirama seemed to be studying Madara Uchiha's body in a secret cave. Hashirama wouldn't have let Madara's body lie exposed in the wilderness, or let Tobirama desecrate his old friend. So, Tobirama probably dug up Madara's grave and stole the body. The corrupted Madara was smart. He predicted Hashirama's actions, and he knew Tobirama wouldn't destroy his body. Tobirama also knew so much about the Uchiha clan's Sharingan, even knowing it evolved from intense emotions creating special chakra in the mind. It's hard not to suspect Tobirama experimented on Uchiha ninjas, probably during the Warring States period, before Konoha's founding. Who knows if he continued experimenting on Uchiha ninjas after Konoha was established. So, Orochimaru-sensei, are you confident you can figure it out? Chapter 76 Proud of the Spring Breeze. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Give me the time and resources, and I can definitely figure this out. Orochimaru clenched his fists, a confident gleam in his golden eyes. He was practically drooling, like some creep eyeing up an innocent girl. In the anime, when Orochimaru battled the third Hokage inside that barrier during the Chunin exams, he peeled off his face to reveal a woman's face. The third Hokage was shocked and asked, "You've already mastered it?" That forbidden technique, that shows the impure world reincarnation jutsu, had a prototype, a semi-finished version. Orochimaru probably spent years refining that ninjutsu, but it's still imperfect and has tons of flaws. I'm sure you'll crack it, Orochimaru-sensei. Uchiha Gen made his position clear, then followed up with, "So, what are the biggest hurdles right now?" Two main issues. First, how to ensure the soul isn't tethered to its original body after leaving it. Second, how to let the soul completely take over another person's body without being rejected. I have some ideas on the first point, but I'm pretty much in the dark on the second. I guess I'll have to figure it out through endless experiments. The second Hokage's notes say transferring a soul into another body causes a violent backlash. It's not just physical incompatibility, it seems to violate some fundamental rule of the soul. But that's okay. Every breakthrough comes after a mountain of failures. As long as we're headed in the right direction, I'll conquer it eventually. I'm not scared of a challenge. What scares me is being lost, wandering aimlessly. Gen Uchiha looked thoughtful, and then his eyes widened with sudden insight. Seeing this, Orochimaru perked up. "You have an idea?" he asked with a smile. "Yeah, I do. Sensei, why are you and the second Hokage trying to force it on other people's bodies? What about your own body?" Orochimaru paused, muttering, "My own body, my own body." He repeated it a few times, then it clicked. He was practically buzzing with excitement. His smile was a little unsettling, like some weirdo with bizarre kinks. "You're right. If we can't avoid the body's rejection of the soul, why not use my own? You're saying use cloning to grow cells from your younger years, then slowly cultivate soulless bodies." Uchiha Gen nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. Preserve enough cells from when you were younger and keep them dormant. Then you'll have an endless supply of suitable bodies." "Is that technically feasible?" "Absolutely. Gen-kun, you're a genius. But there's another question, Sensei. Have you considered it?" "What's that?" "Does the soul have a lifespan, just like the body?" That's what worried Uchiha General. Even though he had the soul fruit's ability to constantly strengthen his soul, he couldn't guarantee its immortality, let alone anyone else's. "That is a problem." Orochimaru's excitement faded slightly, but quickly returned, his voice regaining its fervor. "Gen-kun, even if the soul does have a limited lifespan, the second Hokage's reanimation jutsu shows it's got to be way longer than the body's. As long as we achieve our vision, we'll have plenty of time to figure that out. I believe there's no problem in this world that can't be solved, we just haven't found the right approach yet. You're right, Sensei. We shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. Let's just focus on making it work. Thinking about it, he was getting a little too ambitious. With the soul fruit, even if his soul had a lifespan, it would still be way longer than the average ninja's. So, Sensei, what are you going to call this groundbreaking ninjutsu? I've already got a name for it, reincarnation jutsu without corpse. Talking about it is just making me impatient. Enough chatter, I'm getting started on the experiment right away. Here's a list of the equipment you wanted and where to put it. If you need anything with the research, just ask. Orochimaru pulled a scroll from his vest pocket and handed it to Uchiha General, then he took off, adding over his shoulder, for your devotion to me. Gen Uchiha tucked away the scroll, shook his head with a smile, finished his tea in one gulp, and stood up to leave. After leaving the lab, Uchiha Gen headed straight to the police station to get Uchiha Fugaku to sign off on his sick leave. He didn't want his salary going to waste. Hey, Gen's back. Have a seat. How'd it go? Fugaku, who was buried in paperwork, looked up and saw Gen Uchiha. His serious, old-fashioned face suddenly broke into a smile. Fugaku had been riding high lately. First, his father-in-law was out of prison and serving as an Uchiha elder, the other two elders were now on their best behavior, which greatly increased his power as the clan leader. His power in the police force was also increasing. The police force had only so many positions available, and both deputy minister positions were filled. The elders were against Uchiha Setsuna getting a position as deputy minister because that meant that one of them was going to be outranked. They decided to not tempt fate. The elders had already given in, and Uchiha Fugaku and Uchiha Setsuna were happy to not push it any further, lest they create infighting among the family. Shisui had already entered the 4th Hokage Zanbu, which would allow him broader opportunities for development in the future, as everyone knew, as long as the Hokage's disciples didn't die midway, they'd at least be high-level officials in Konoha and might even become Hokage. In other words, their Uchiha family was guaranteed a seat at the top in Konoha. If Shisui was good enough, the Uchiha family would produce the first Hokage, but even if that didn't happen, his eldest son was more than able to worship under Shisui or Kakashi to increase his chances of becoming another Hokage. His wife was also pregnant and his second child would be born the following year. He hoped that it would be a son so that his son would also be eligible to become Shisui or Kakashi's disciple and become a young Hokage. He was full of hopes and a promising future, so Uchiha Fugaku was in a good mood. Two of these three joys were related to Uchiha Gen, so Uchiha Fugaku was smiling all over his face. If the last happiness was also related to Uchiha Gen, then Uchiha Fugaku would be pissed. Thanks, clan leader. It went well. I won't sit. I'm beat. I'm just going to cash in my vacation days and crash. Gen Uchiha grinned sheepishly. I get it. Get back home. I'll let the guys know down the line. Oh, and by the way, Setsuna-sama asked me to tell you to come by for dinner at his place when you get a chance. Mikoto's cooking. Thank you, clan leader, I understand. When? Itachi will let you know tomorrow. Okay, I'm out. Alright. Uchiha Gen bowed politely and left. Chapter 77 Mature Homitz. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gen Uchiha never cared much about bowing. To him, it was just etiquette, all surface-level stuff. Back in his previous life, he saw folks from other places getting all worked up about the elaborate bowing ceremonies in Japan. They were judging it by their own customs. But that kind of bowing is just how things are done over there. In Japan, people often use over-the-top etiquette to get something they want or to say they're sorry. They see etiquette as just a tool. Even if they mess up and apologize, they don't necessarily change their behavior. It's like they think, okay, I said I was sorry. What more do you want? As long as they apologize, it's like, all is forgiven. But actual compensation? Forget about it. It's all about the small gesture, no real substance. That's Japan for you. Korea isn't much different. and the ninja world has picked up on that habit, too. No matter how awful, horrible, or inhumane you are, as long as you apologize, show a little remorse, or turn over a new leaf, you're good to go. Uchiha hated that mindset, but it didn't stop him from using it. Double standards are baked into human nature, right? Using your own argument against you. Pulling the rug out from under someone. Classic. If you do something wrong later on purpose or by accident, don't sweat it. You'll be forgiven in the end anyway. Back in his yard, Uchiha Gen used a watered-down version of wind-release ninjutsu to clear the dust. Then he went inside and flopped on the couch. With a wave of his hand, small balls of bright white light floated out and landed on the broom, shovel, and rag, his cleaning supplies. Master, master, master. The cleaning supplies sprang to life, chattering away. Quiet. Uchiha Gen held up a hand and said, Zhu Rong, Wu Sheng, you two supervise the cleaning. A mature cleaning tool should be able to clean up after itself. Yes, sir. Zhu Rong and Wu Sheng, eager for some action, happily took on their roles as supervisors. After a bit of rest, Uchiha Gen got up, went to the bedroom, and sat cross-legged. He made a hand seal, and half of his soul floated out of his head, sank into the ground, and traveled outside the village. Konoha's barrier system can detect things underground, but it's not that deep, and it's not always on. The exact times are a secret known only to a few top Konoha officials. Uchiha Gen wasn't a big shot in Konoha, but Orochimaru was close enough and knew when the barrier went offline. Still, just to be safe, Uchiha Gen went deeper underground. The soul doesn't feel much pressure at that depth anyway. Once he was outside Konoha village, Uchiha Gen's soul headed straight for the Forest of Death and ended up in a forest 30 miles west of the forest's edge. The journey only took a breath. He emerged from the ground in front of a big, camouflaged tent that protected against the weather. The tent was covered with white snowflakes, and inside were all kinds of neatly arranged and well-packaged research instruments. Uchiha Gen, floating in the air, raised his ghostly hands, and with a thought, clusters of white light floated down like bubbles, passed through the tent, and landed on the instruments. Master, master, master. Soon, the instruments came to life, with simple faces and tiny limbs, chattering like the cleaning supplies earlier. He got a ton of souls and lifespans on his last mission, so Gen Uchiha was more willing to spend them on this. Even though he could always take back the temporary gift, it still meant a loss. So, in the past, Uchiha wouldn't give a soul the ability to move unless he had to, and would rather spend his own time. This time, though, he couldn't let others carry the equipment. Even if he could summon the big snake from Ryuchi Cave, Gen Uchiha wouldn't do it. If Orochimaru in Ryuchi Cave knew the location of his research base, he might get curious and come poking around, only to find two Uchihas. Even if Orochimaru didn't tell anyone, it would still give him leverage. Nobody wants to be under someone else's thumb. Normal folks don't like people knowing about their dirty secrets, except for creeps, of course. Quiet. Uchiha Gen floated into the tent, a foot above the ground, with his hands behind his back, looking serious. The newly created instrument homunculi immediately fell silent. You're all grown-up homunculi now, so you need to learn to carry yourselves. And remember, don't break yourselves, or you'll be sorry. These instruments were delicate, and it would be a pain if they got damaged. If they hadn't been carefully built and packaged for protection, he wouldn't have let them transport themselves. Money wasn't the issue. The problem was getting a new one. What a hassle, and what a waste of time. He was as eager as Orochimaru to start studying this stuff. Those two Magatama Sharingan had been on his mind for ages. Even though his real power was greater than Shirsui's, he had double Three Magatama, and the double Two Magatama looked inferior to Shirsui and others. He didn't think he was worse, but the Uchiha clan respected the Sharingan. In their eyes, he was undoubtedly the second born of the Uchiha twins, not the eldest. Yes, master. The instrument homunculi replied in unison. Uchiha Gen hadn't given them too many souls or lifespans. And these were other people's souls, so they weren't nearly as intelligent as Zhu Rong and Wu Sheng, whose intelligence was on par with normal people. The instrument homunculi didn't need much intelligence. They just needed to follow orders. Once they arrived, Uchiha Gen would take back their souls and lifespans. This was to avoid the two Uchihas noticing something, and also because he felt that instruments with their own thoughts were a hazard to his research. He needed the purest data and the most reliable results. Follow me. Uchiha Gen deliberately kept his speed low as he floated forward slowly. The instrument homunculi immediately followed, moving at the pace of a normal person, soul perception. As they moved, Gen Uchiha activated the art of spiritual transformation to sense their surroundings. Souls of different sizes and strengths appeared in his mind like a radar screen. The art of spiritualization could sense souls and remember the soul's aura, whether it was a human or another species. During the Fourth War, Kato Dan used this ability to pinpoint Tsunade's location and rescue her. Of course, Tsunade and the other 4 Kage ended up escaping. If Uchiha Madara hadn't thought that everyone would be equal under the infinite Tsukuyomi, he might have intervened, but he was too lazy or didn't care enough to fix it. The 5 Kage almost got away with it. Madara Uchiha was confident that he could succeed with the infinite Tsukuyomi, and he did, but the results weren't what he'd expected. With his perception skills, he could easily avoid aggressive beasts or wild psychic beasts in the forest. It was winter, so the animals didn't like going out anyway. There weren't any surprises on the way. It took a long time, though. It took a whole afternoon to reach the cave where the 2 Uchihas were hidden. The place was pretty far, and some areas were hard to navigate. If Gen Uchiha hadn't been able to separate his soul, he wouldn't have been able to stay out there the whole afternoon. When he arrived, Uchiha Gen split his soul again, entered the cave, and possessed Mui and Mur. Then he walked up to Uchiha Uichi and Uchiha Mori, who looked up with puzzled expressions, and whacked them with a stick, knocking them out, leaving the awkward wooden bodies behind. Gen Uchiha led the team into the cave, ignoring Mui and Muer's curious questions, and waiting for the instrument homunculi to set themselves up. Gen Uchiha used his power to retrieve their souls and lifespans. Then he rose into the sky. His figure streaked through the night like a meteor, leaving a sky-blue semicircular curve in the sky before returning to his body in an instant. When the barrier shifts in the evening, there's a brief gap in perception. Chapter 78 I Only Owe the East Wind. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The research gear's been moved, so all that's left is tweaking the cave before we can officially kick off the research. Gen Uchiha's not interested in side projects. As long as we get results, every penny and ounce of effort will be worth it. When his soul snapped back into his body, the house was already spotless. Gen reclaimed the soul and lifespan he'd loaned to the cleaning tools, then headed to the kitchen to whip up some food, eat, shower, practice, chill, and lights out at 10:30 sharp. The next morning, around 11:30, Uchiha Itachi showed up, ringing the doorbell. Uchiha Gen, fresh from his practice and shower, threw on some presentable clothes and answered the door. Hey, Gen, Grandpa wants you to come over for lunch. Standing there, Uchiha Itachi beamed and gave a polite bow. Got it. Itachi, long time no see. How's it going? Uchiha shut the door, a warm smile spreading across his face, and reached out to ruffle Itachi's hair. Great. I've already started tackling the ninja school curriculum. How's your training coming, Gen? It's been a while. I haven't seen you in ages. I was out of the village on assignment. Things have calmed down lately, so I've been enjoying the peace and quiet. They strolled along, chatting easily. Heard from your dad that Shirsue's joined the ANBU? Yeah, Shirsue's been swamped lately. We haven't had much time to train together. That's the way it is. Shirsue's helping bridge the gap between Konoha and the Uchiha, clearing the way for a new chapter for the clan. You've got to understand that. I know this is an important step in making the Uchiha great again. Uchiha Itachi replied, his expression serious. Huh, you get it. Good. Hearing Uchiha Gen's praise, Uchiha Itachi's face lit up. They talked as they walked, exchanging greetings with people they passed. After a few minutes, they arrived at a house on the east side of the clan compound. It had clearly been freshly painted and renovated. Gen, you're here. Come on in. Uchiha Mikoto, in a flowing blue dress, stood at the gate, her smooth black hair cascading down her shoulders. A gentle smile played on her lips, her voice soft and welcoming. You're working hard even while pregnant. Thanks for everything, Mikoto. It's not hard at all. A little exercise is good for the baby. After a few quick greetings, the three of them entered the courtyard and headed to the living room. An old man wearing a black kimono with the Uchiha crest, his hair and beard streaked with white, approached them. The old man had a lean face, prominent cheekbones, and eyes as sharp as an eagle. He looked like a force to be reckoned with. Elder Setsuna, it's an honor. Gen Uchiha gave a slight bow, maintaining a respectful but confident demeanor. Father, let me introduce you to Uchiha Gen, one of our Uchiha twins. That we were able to get out so early is indispensable for his contribution. Uchiha Mikoto stood between the two men, a smile on her face. Mikoto, you're too kind. I'm just doing what I can. The patriarch's the one who really made it happen. Seeing Uchiha Gen's confident, almost eager attitude, Uchiha Setsuna was pleased. The Uchiha clan needed talented people with brains who knew how to keep their cards close to their chest. Too many Uchiha were brash, blunt, and arrogant. Young man, no need to be so modest. We all know what you've contributed. As they say, actions speak louder than words. I won't say anything more now, but I'll remember this. Come, sit down, have some tea with an old man, and let's chat. Mikoto, bring out the food as soon as you can. Uchiha Setsuna gave Uchiha Gen a pat on the shoulder, then took his arm affectionately, holding Itachi's hand with the other. Don't worry, father. Everything's prepped, and lunch will be ready soon. Uchiha Mikoto headed to the kitchen, leaving Uchiha Gen and the other two to drink tea and chat in the living room. The conversation stayed light, nothing too serious or controversial. Uchiha Setsuna mostly shared stories from his past. At noon, the food was served, and everyone moved to the dining room. Following the rules of a large clan, they didn't talk during the meal, and no one joined Setsuna Uchiha for a drink, so lunch wrapped up quickly. After finishing the meal, lingering over tea and conversation for a bit, Uchiha Gen took his leave. There wasn't much left to say. They were all on the same page. The Uchiha and Konoha were enjoying a period of peace, and there were no pressing matters to discuss. The next morning, Uchiha Gen left Konoha, using his position as deputy captain of the police force to get to the secret cave. He pulled the same trick as before, knocking out the two Uchiha guards, and then began transforming the cave. Now that he knew where the equipment was coming from, Gen Uchiha began deliberately racking up the hours researching and practicing Earth Release Ninjutsu. And he was making real progress with the Earth Release Ninjutsu. Combined with using the soul fruit to give the land a soul, he was tackling this from two angles. Uchiha Gen had essentially finished converting the cave in most of the day. It wasn't as professional or sophisticated as Orochimaru's research base, but it was more than enough for his purposes. Uchiha Uichi and Uchiha Mori were placed in two research bases, one east and one west. He moved two sets of research equipment there as well. Then, Uchiha Gen went to the simple lounge and sat cross-legged on the cold mat, making a hand seal. Half of Uchiha Gen's soul emerged from his head and shot into the sky. A blue light like a shooting star cut through the cold wind and snowflakes. In a single breath, he crossed mountains and rivers and arrived in Baishur town. Soul perception. Groups of weak and strong souls appeared in Uchiha Gen's consciousness space. Throughout Baishur town, no matter human or animal, everyone with a soul fell within his perception. Measuring the strength of each soul, Uchiha Gen quickly picked out his targets. His soul split into four, becoming four streams of light descending toward the town. In a hotel on the east side of Baishur town, a young wanderer returned to his room with the food and wine he'd bought. As he set it down, ready to dig in, a stream of light crashed through the roof and entered through his forehead, instantly freezing him in place. In the swirling colors of his consciousness, the wanderer's mind took the form of a human, and he looked at the stranger who'd just appeared with confusion. Who are you? What are you doing here? Uchiha Gen didn't bother with explanations and lunged. It wasn't long before screams echoed in the wanderer's consciousness. The wanderer's mind was obliterated, mentally shattered and dead, but Uchiha Gen didn't absorb his soul by any means. After all, killing someone and taking over their body was extreme enough. Absorbing their soul, so they could never be reincarnated, would be crossing a line. There was no bad blood between them. It was just that the soul from Gen's four-way split was slightly stronger, and he happened to be in the east side of town. He couldn't just leave the poor guy with nothing. He'd caused enough grief and heartache. He had to leave a chance for him to go to the Pure Land. The same thing happened in the west, south, and north parts of town. Soon after, the four figures in black cloaks gathered on the northern edge of town and headed toward Konoha together. Gen Uchiha didn't wait for the four to arrive. Returning to Konoha village before dark, the four of them couldn't immediately start the experimental research when they arrived. He needed to starve the two Uchihas for a few days first. But, everything's set. Now it's just a matter of waiting for the perfect opportunity. We'll soon find out whether we can find a unique path for Sharingan evolution. Chapter 79 Remarks on the Launch. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Alright, new chapters drop tomorrow at noon. I'm aiming for a big update, 5 chapters, about 10,000 words worth. That's all for now, though. I haven't saved the manuscript yet, so I'll be pulling an all-nighter to get those chapters finalized. I'm really counting on your support, so please consider subscribing. Thanks a ton, everyone. Chapter 83 Magatama Sharingan, Part 1, please order first. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 4 days later, at 3 in the afternoon, night had fallen, blanketing everything in silence. The wind and snow howled, and Konoha was sound asleep, save for the ninjas on duty. Inside the Uchiha compound, Gen Uchiha lay on a comfortable bed, eyes closed, but wide awake. Through the link between their souls, his consciousness traveled to the secret research base outside the village. The soul fruit had 2 main weaknesses. First, it couldn't extract the soul of someone who wasn't afraid. Second, it couldn't command homies if it encountered someone with sound nullifying abilities. Basically, there was no direct conscious communication between the user and their homies, whether they were made from the user's own soul or someone else's. However, Uchiha Gen had mastered the art of spiritualization to bypass the second limitation. He could now directly summon and control his homies through conscious communication. The 4 rogue ninjas whose bodies were being used were special homies, capable of communicating with each other through their soul connection. Gen's soul was so powerful that even an eighth of it made the puppet seem perfectly normal, right up until its death. But for something as important as this research, Gen wanted to be personally involved to be sure. Bright lights illuminated the secret base. The 4 rogue ninja made their way to the lab on the east side. 3 waited outside while 1 opened the door and stepped into the dimly lit room. Once inside, Gen, controlling puppet number 1, began manipulating the various instruments attached to Uchiha. These instruments were designed to monitor changes within the brain, with a few tracking bodily changes. After all, Hashirama Senju had provided some valuable insights, so they had bought the equipment with his suggestions in mind. After 4 days of starvation, dehydration, dizziness, and delirium, Uchiha was roused by the movement of the probes attached to him. He managed a weak groan. What do you want to do? Puppet number 1 didn't respond, focusing on attaching more probes. Soon, Uchiha's entire head was covered in dozens of sensors of different colors and functions, making him look like a hedgehog. It's worth mentioning that Uchiha and Mori Uchiha's heads had been shaved clean to make the probe installation easier. Once finished, puppet number 1 left the lab and closed the door. Uchiha, barely holding on, couldn't keep fighting. He was too hungry. He let his head fall to conserve energy. 3 minutes later, the lab door swung open, and 4 figures entered, simultaneously forming seals, and cast a coordinated illusion. It was a low-level, C-rank illusion. Gen Uchiha had modified it to make the victim overlook details and become careless. Hey, wake up, wake up. Puppet number 1 slapped Uchiha's face hard, forcing him to lift his head and manage another feeble croak. Kill me. We won't kill you. Look, we found you a new friend. Someone you're probably very familiar with, right? Uchiha's eyes widened, focusing on the figures in front of him as the blurry light became clearer. A few feet away stood a girl, 8 or 9 years old, with a round face, black hair, wearing orange clothes, and a slightly plump build. Her mouth was taped shut, her eyes were filled with tears, her face showed pure terror, and her body trembled. Sister, sister. Why are you here? Uchiha was shocked, and a surge of adrenaline flooded his body. His mind cleared, and his voice was filled with anxiety and desperation. MMPH, woo. The girl's muffled cries were unintelligible. Tears streamed down her face. Bastards! What are you going to do? Let my sister go, the puppet chuckled, a cruel smirk on its face. Let her go. I don't think so. We finally caught her after our spy was exposed in Kirigakure. Rumor has it that the Sharingan of Uchiha evolve whenever you lose an important bond. I want to know if your sister is such a bond. A terrible premonition washed over Uchiha. No. He started, but before he could finish, the two men in black robes holding the little girl each pulled out a kunai, one slicing her throat, the other plunging into her heart. Ah! Crimson blood gushed out as the little girl cried in pain, her face contorted, her eyes rapidly losing their light. As the two puppets struck, the soul hidden in the girl's body was transferred through one puppet's arm, while the other pumped chakra into their arm to sustain the transformation technique. Gen was acting as a relay through his soul connection. All four puppets shared a single mind. Otherwise, the transformation technique would have failed the moment she was injured. No. Witnessing his sister's agonizing death, Uchiha screamed in anguish, thrashing wildly on the cross. The Scarlet Sharingan emerged, one tomo swiftly becoming two as they spun, beep, 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 star. During the experiment, the instruments beeped, recording the feedback, and colorful indicator lights flashed. Even two tomo Sharingan would have been enough to see through the trick, but the earlier illusion caused Uchiha to overlook the flaw. Well, it seems the rumors are true. Your sister really was important to you. Puppet number 1 leaned in close to the cross, watching the wildly spinning tomo. His voice was mocking and taunting, driving Uchiha mad. Ha, ha, ha. Uchiha's bloodshot Sharingan glared at the man in black robes, his nostrils flaring, his face twisted in fury, and his voice dripping with cold venom. You better kill me now, because sooner or later I will kill you, your family, and destroy your Kirigakure. Are you trying to scare me? We ninjas of the Blood Mist Village don't scare easily. A mere two-tomo Sharingan might not even match a jounin from Kirigakure. Turning away, puppet number 1 ordered, get rid of the body. Yes. Puppets number 2 and number 3 answered in unison, then dragged the corpse of puppet number 4 toward the door, leaving a trail of blood behind. Stop. You can't touch my sister's body. Snap. Puppet number 1 chopped Uchiha on the back of the neck. No matter how hard he resisted, Uchiha could only slump into unconsciousness. In his current state, 2-tomo or even 3-tomo Sharingan couldn't change the situation unless they evolved into the Mangekyo Sharingan. Every stage of the Sharingan needs careful study and training to unleash its true potential. The Mangekyo was no exception, but even the initial power of the Mangekyo Sharingan, if the ability was right, would be enough to free Uchiha and kill his captors. But for Uchiha to evolve from 2-tomo to Mangekyo was as likely as Obito Uchiha evolving from a 1-tomo to the Mangekyo, basically a fantasy. Puppet number 1 meticulously gathered the data in the lab and then headed to the lab on the west side to repeat the same experiment, but this time it wasn't his sister, but his younger brother. A young, impulsive, and emotional Uchiha boy couldn't withstand such intense torment. Mori Uchiha, with his excellent potential, also evolved from 1-tomo to 2-tomo. The price was another scrapped puppet. Puppet number 1 gathered data from both sides, communicated it through their soul link, and transmitted it back. Uchiha Gen lay on his warm bed in the bedroom, quietly receiving and analyzing all the data. He hoped to discover the secret, both for his own sake and for the sake of the two poor mice. It seems there are only 5 chapters, but it's actually over 12,000 words. More like 6. I guess one chapter just vanished.